Greetings, this is August 23rd. Have you been enjoying summer? This viewer has sent me some great pictures playing in the Similkameen River. I think in British Columbia we make the best of whatever situation. It's very diverse, lots of different terrains, ecologies, microclimates, and what bonds us together is the environment, the conditions that we exist in. It can be incredibly beautiful in this province, and it can be incredibly dangerous. We're going to look at infrared for the last 24 hours and do a comparison between today and yesterday. There's been fewer infrared overnight, but then they picked up again early this morning. So let's take a look. This is yesterday, August 22nd, 6 to 12 hour map showing little to nothing. Checking it again at 11 o'clock. Not much at all. But this morning, here the 6 to 12 hour infrared starts showing up. We'll zoom in and see some of these control signatures and patterns that are causing a lot of the red on the screen. And looking at the infrared, just the 6 hour map, the most recent time period, a lot of volatility out there. Primarily in the central regions, Nechako Plateau, Fraser Plateau, and then down in the south. A good news story could be much reduced activity in the South Caribou. Last year they were subjected to the Elephant Hill wildfire and many others up around 100 Mile House, Williams Lake, a lot of evacuations. This year a lot quieter. So let's jump around the province. I'm going to move really fast. Please feel free to pause the screen and investigate the areas of your concern more carefully. The NRC data is linked below in the description, a little bit different screen. This is the beta system that we're looking at right now. And we are also looking at the northern end of Vancouver Island. A lot of random activity around Zabalos, where the evacuation order is. These are those lightning starts that perked up last week, and they are still held in fairly contained clusters. These are the fire pockets over the last 12 hours. Now we're jumping east to Sunshine Valley, just south of Highway 3, and it looks like most of the heat is in the Skagit Valley Provincial Park, approximately 10 kilometers east of Chilliwack Lake. Now we're moving further eastward to the Keremeos area. We're zoomed into the 6 and 12 hour maps, looking at some of these controlled patterns over top of random infrared. So this is the most recent heat showing up on the data. Let's zoom out and get a wider field of view. And now we're looking at just the last 6 hours. Now we're looking at the last 12 hours and the last 24 hours. So still a lot of intensity in this area. Now we're moving east and slightly north. This is the area east of Vernon in the Monashees, around Nakusp and the Upper Arrow Lake. This is a 24-hour map, and some fire perimeters are not indicated, so do check with BC Wildfire. The link is below. Look for new starts, those red spots on the BC Wildfire map, because new fires can pop up, holdover fires can break out, especially after lightning passes through an area. We've moved down to the south end of Arrow Lake and right at the border along east of Christina Lake. We're looking at the last 24 hours, and I'm seeing a lot of these sparks, this infrared going over top of the northern flanks. If the wind is coming from the north, these can be control strategies to eliminate fuel while the wind's in the favor of crews, especially down on Christina Lake there at the north flank. We can see what looks like 3 infrared in a pattern. And moving eastward, Slocan Lake, looking at the area west of New Denver. This is the 24-hour map, seeing a lot of random activity to the west of Roseberry and south of Highway 6, an area to watch in case winds shift from the west. Now we're moving to the south end of Kootenay Lake. Meechin Lake fire is on the right-hand side, and the Blazed Creek fire is on the left-hand side along Highway 3. There's actually 2 fires out there. I'm looking at the one closest to Salmo, just east of Salmo. That seems to be showing some expansion. We are looking at just the last 6 hours, so there's a lot of volatility still out there. And let's look at the 12-hour map, and now the full 24 hours. Very busy area. I'm still not seeing any progress eastwards towards Kimberley. That's a good sign. So the fire flank is being held back and is not being allowed to approach the valley to St. Mary's Lake. And winds have been coming from the east, northeast, and that's very helpful to crews on this fire specifically. We're moving north, the area around Glacier Park, and looking at Golden on your right-hand side, and on the left-hand side of the screen, there is a couple of hot spots out there. So again, if you're in that area, you want to check with the BC wildfire map and look for new starts. Now we're going to jump way over to the west. This is west of Highway 5, east of Highway 1 at Hell's Gate. A lot of the smoke that's coming into the lower mainland has been coming from this fire. And we're looking at the 12-hour map, seeing controlled patterns over top of random hotspots. So there's strategy at work here, and I am seeing expansion, some outliers on the north and southern flanks. Moving further north, area west of Lillooet, west of Seton Portage, right around Darcy. This is on rugged terrain up on the mountainsides, and we're looking at the 12-hour map. We're going to go a little bit further north. This is into the Chilcotin, Monarch Mountain, Kleen, west of Kleen. This area got hit hard last year with fires, and they burned it seemed like all summer long. Again this year, we're also seeing a lot of patterning in some of these fire zones. Zooming out, we're going to take a look at Tweedsmuir, that's on the left-hand side of your screen, and some of the areas around Nazko. This much red in a 12-hour map means volatility and intensity. Much more random behavior in the Tweedsmuir fire. That is a modified response, meaning that it's being monitored as opposed to being fought directly. And if you check out the BC Wildfire site, there's specific terminology regarding responses. We've moved over to the Nazko area, looking at these 4 fire pockets, and to the southeast, the fire that's the Nakusp fire to the southwest of Quesnel. A lot of activity going on in the last 12-hour map, a lot of heat being generated. I am seeing some outlying infrared sparks, let's call them, but most of the intensity is contained within these existing fire pockets, so not a lot of spread eastwards or southwards. And zooming into the area north of Nazko, seeing again this patterning over top of random fire behavior. I am seeing some southern excursions on the fire that's directly 5 kilometers north of Nazko. The NRC link below will allow you to look over time to see the progression of a fire. This map does not. It only allows us to see heat over a 24-hour period. Yes, we can break down that 24-hour period, but we can't go back days and weeks. Now we've moved to Francois Lake, Fraser Lake, the area around Unshaw and Red Hills, seeing a lot of this horizontal lateral patterning over random hotspots. I'm also seeing movement northwards towards Unshaw. We're now looking at about 3 kilometers distance south of Unshaw, where the fire flank is. This is the 12-hour map. Now we're going to roll into the 24-hour map to see all the activity over the last 24 hours. Not a lot of change there. I am seeing excursions to the southern flank towards Cheslada. This is the area where those massive plumes of smoke are coming out on the satellite imagery, and we'll take a look at those today. And finally, we're turning on the fire perimeters so we can see if there's movement. And yes, definitely southwards, there's excursion sparks moving in a southerly direction. We've zoomed into the Shovel Lake fire north of Fraser Lake, looking at sparks that are heading over the northern flank, and there's a couple that have come outside the southern perimeter towards Fraser Lake. Keep in mind, some of these may be control strategies or planned ignitions. Let's zoom out and take a look at Babine, Bulkley Valley. There have been a lot of intensity on these fire pockets, but it looks subdued today. We're looking at the 24-hour map. However, if you look down to your lower right, there is some intensity that's moving northwards. We're going really fast. Check out the NRC link below the Canadian Wildfire Information System. You can zoom into specific areas of your concern and look in greater detail and see all the back roads and routes. We're jumping to the far north now, top of the province, Telegraph Crk, community hit really hard with wildfires this year. We're zoomed in on the community, looking at some controlled patterns. It looks like just to the south of the town, a lot of random behavior in the mountains to the north and to the south. Here's the fire perimeter map. I was seeing cloud cover for this satellite imagery over this region, and hopefully they're going to get some moisture today, tomorrow. Do watch out for lightning. Now we're moving further east. This is Highway 37, Highway 97, Good Hope, Laird, the Cassiar region. This is almost like a complex series of fires. They are showing movement from the southwest to the northeast, and that's been the prevalent wind flow, though there is variation. The north tends to get its own weather system, and it kind of separates in a band of high pressure. So let's jump to NASA's world view. Look at the satellite imagery. This is the province. We can see the clouds moving into the north up by Telegraph Crk, and then there's a band of high pressure. Then we see the fires around Fraser Lake, Nadina, Tweedsmuir, just kicking out intense smoke and haze flowing eastwards. We're zooming into the area around the Nazko Plateau. We can see these great plumes sending emissions eastward. Part of the discussions I've been having with people offline is that a lot of this material, I believe, has made the prairie's soil so rich. Imagine this going on for thousands of years. Lightning strikes, wildfire burns, prevalent winds coming from the west, and just making the soils in the prairies have that much more nutrition. This is a hypothesis, but I'd like to look at some soil studies to see if there's evidence of this theory. Had a comment yesterday from one of our 93 Mile House viewers, very smoky in that area. This is why. Those fires around Nazko are kind of arcing to the southeast and then coming across to Highway 97. And some of that smoke looks so thick you could almost surf it. Zooming back out again, looking at the southern portion of the province, we can see the valleys and the terrain highlighted so clearly. It just fascinates me because now I can see the intricacy and network of these river systems as they're kind of spotlighted in smoke. Now we're going to take a look at the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System. This is looking at the morning of August 22nd. We're going to roll into the 23rd and see if there's any change. There wasn't a lot of new hotspots in the wee hours of the morning. Most of the activity has come since then as this morning is heated up, and we're looking at some of those controlled patterns. So we're going to have to go back to this maybe tonight and look to see if there's more significant change over the last 24-hour period. And the takeaway is have multiple sources of information. The BC wildfire mapping, the infrared data, the satellite data. And here we have on the NRC some of the prior wildfire perimeters mapped out. So we can compare with the fires going on today and see if they're running into old burn areas, and that may slow down the fire's progression. 2017 isn't indicated on these maps as of yet, but I hope they do add that and put in some of these other fires, because those recent burns actually start acting like a fire guard. Okay, let's jump over to Windy. Watching this wind pattern move down from the north, winds flowing from the west appear prevalent. There will be isolated areas where you're going to have localized weather, localized wind conditions, and it's also going to vary depending on terrain. Wind's going to pick up a little faster up on the ridges, the plateaus. It's going to slow down when it gets into the valleys. Watch out for those afternoon gusts. That 3 o'clock breeze comes in, and tomorrow, Friday, early afternoon, we're looking at some increased winds, could be up over 40 kilometers an hour. And up in the northeast, on the other side of the Rockies, they have their own weather systems there coming from the northeast at 15 kilometers an hour. So depending on your position, you want to evaluate what your routes are going to be and what direction those fire flanks could be moving in. I've thrown the pin into Hudson Bay, 82 kilometers an hour. That is definitely a wind event if you're looking at doing some recreational boating out in the middle. While far to the southwest, Hawaii is having their own wind event. A hurricane is approaching from the southwest. It's quite a calm 7 kilometers an hour in the eye, but if you move outside over 131 kilometers in some of those counterclockwise spins. And if we take a look at the rain accumulation, over 145 millimeters, that's a few buckets full, and 8-meter swells. Consider that's the ocean being raised up approximately 30 feet. Meanwhile, on the Big Bar Cam, Dry BC, we're looking at some haze out there. A lot of that's probably coming from the Wild Goose Lake fire to the west over north of Big Bar, and probably some coming over from the fires west of Kleen. This is looking at last night just before sunset, same sort of conditions. It looks like it's actually got a little denser this morning. This is an image of the ferry crossing at Francois Lake last night. Just a haze, almost like a fog across the lake. Looking at the northern shore, then Stella Road looking west at Fraser Lake. Again, a lot of particulate matter in the hills, in the valleys. Then we'll take a quick look in at Smithers. A bit of blue sky. It could be up in the right-hand portion of the screen. The hills look like they have a lot of haze. Spectacular vistas in Smithers. And if you notice the emergency button at the top of the panel, you can click that. It'll take you over to TNRD, and there you'll find sort of a database, a list of different road conditions. You can scroll down and find out what's going on in your area. And they also have a response system set up. You can ask a question and get feedback from a human. And they are recommending that you go to Drive BC to get the latest warnings and road conditions. So keep that bookmarked, Drive BC. And I know it sounds like I'm selling the service of Drive BC, but seriously, it's a resource and we're paying for it. And the highway cams can give some pretty breathtaking scenery if you just want to tour around the province and stay in your living room. And finally, one last item I just want to bring up. For those of you in 70 Mile House, you may not recognize what this is. It's a mosquito. And in Kimberley, where they're now under evacuation order and with the fires there, a couple of wild birds, ravens, were found deceased, and they had succumbed to West Nile virus. So on top of all other things, it's not necessarily a deadly disease, but it can make people very, very sick, and it can plague horses, dogs, and other mammals. Watch out for that, and avoid picking up dead birds unless you're wearing the proper protection. Just be cautious. So we find ourselves in the dwindling days of summer. Hopefully some rain is coming in. Watch out for lightning. Watch out for wind events. Tomorrow, Friday, early afternoon, could be some increased velocity. Be safe, everyone. Know your position, know what resources you need, know your escape routes, and keep your nose to the breeze. Thank you very, very much for watching.